Okay, so today's a very special day. Today is the 3rd of ER, and it is the completion of the entire first book of Tanya. And it's very, very interesting. We've mentioned this before that the last 3 chapters of Tanya are really one theme. And of course, we know in Judaism there's a deep connection between the beginning and the end. So the question, of course, is what's the connection between the beginning of Tanya, which starts off that Tanya b'seif perik gimel the nida mashpir nois tei tzadik v'al tei rasha v'afilu kol ha'elam kulayim lach tzadikata hoya beinach karasha. That before a soul comes into this world, it is commanded to be a tzaddik and not to be a rasha. And even if the entire world tells you that you are a tzaddik, think of yourself as a rasha. And basically, the Tanya comes to tell us, don't think of yourself as wicked, because you can become sad, but rather think of yourself as potentially wicked, because the human being who is aware that he has a Yetzer Hara, he has an animal soul, that means we all have potential evil in us. It's actually very important to know that. Because the one thing that people are very good at is denying their own evil. We're not so bad at seeing it in others, but we're very, very, very bad at seeing it in ourselves. And every single human being really, as Freud says, every human being has almost infinite capacity to be very righteous or very wicked, right? Everybody that was born, in fact it says Moshe Rabbeinu, I think the Baal Shem Tov brings it down, Moshe Rabbeinu, there was a king that understood how to read faces, so he sent one of his artists to see Moshe Rabbeinu. And he made an image of Moshe Rabbeinu, and he took it back to the king. The king said, this man is a murderer, it can't be true Moshe Rabbeinu. So he came back to Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu said, yeah, that was my destiny, but I changed it. So that's Moshe Rabbeinu. Baal Shem Tov said on himself, like had he not worked on himself, he would have been like a highway robber. So these are the greatest of the great. So it shows that a human being has a capacity of ultimate goodness, but also very great evil as well. And where do we see that? We see that when people get angry, they lose their mind, they do stupid things that they would never do, they'd regret it. Famous story with the Baal Shem Tov, that he once was at somebody's house and the person was shouting at his helper, his servant. Baal Shem Tov said, if I didn't know whose house I was at, I wouldn't know this was basically whose house it was, because when you were shouting, the shindalid, the negative energy of evil, of anger, was surrounding you, and I couldn't see you. That's what it says, whoever gets angry, all the fires of hell surround them. So it's a real thing. In fact, it says, very interesting, it'd be good to do a book on anger. The Tzemach Tzedek speaks about when a person is angry, they lose their soul. So a person has a soul, the way a person's born, they have a neshama, they have a sensitivity, compassion. But when a person, there are many things Pirkei Avos brings down that causes us to lose our mind. Addiction causes us. He's a nice person, but now in this state, he's a different person. He's not the same person. The person who's angry is a nice person, but at this moment, he's a murderer. He's gone crazy. People can have desires or kina. He's jealous. He's a nice person, but he's jealous, and his jealousy is an emotion. It's a shindalid. It's causing him to do something that he would never do. You ask this person, you think people should behave in such a way? He say no. In fact, when we get to heaven, they show us scenes, and they ask us to judge these scenes. And it turns out that these were things that we did ourselves. The person, first of all, also has to learn to be non-judgmental. Why? Because a person who is not judgmental will at least not judge himself. It's very important not to be judgmental in life. Now, how does the Tanya end? It ends with a very interesting thing. The last 3 chapters are explaining what the Yenuka said. This was a child who maintained the wisdom of God that they learned in the womb. And they said that you should always maintain oil. You always have to maintain oil. Why? Because the Shekhinah is on top of your head. And the Shekhinah is like a fire. Your body is like the wick. And the oil is your Torah and the good deeds. Okay, very interesting. So the question was, why does the Shekhinah need oil? Why can't the Shekhinah, the fire, come from Hashem? Why does it need any oil? So the answer is that the Shekhinah, it's a little bit like air. Fire needs air. So in order for it to breathe, it needs air. You know, if you have a fire, you cover it, you take out the air, in a second it goes out. It's a funny thing. Everything in this world needs air to exist. So why do you need air? So the air feeds the fire. What is the air? Well, the story is that the Shekhinah needs something to pull it down into this world. It's nature of fire. The nature is to go away from this world. What's going to attach it? What's going to bring it down to this world? So this is what we call halos man. In the relationship between men and women is a similar relationship between God and the Jewish people. We're like the female. God is like the male. So we know that women, you know, it's one of my theories in life. I used to think that women, you know, they're older, you know, they're just poor guys, you know, the guys are playing around, they're not serious. Guys were serious, they would be able to get married. It turns out it's not the case. That there are a lot of women that don't want to get married. They're the ones that are playing around. And not to say that there aren't guys, but in other words, if somehow, you know, a prince fell out of the sky, they'd be interested in him. But the truth of the matter is that they're not that desperate to get married. And the truth is, if they are desperate to get married, in a week they can find a guy. It's not hard for them. You agree with what I'm saying?
Sure, I agree.
Yeah, there you go. 100%.
I'm not desperate, so.
Yeah, they're not desperate to get married. A woman has an ability to charm a man if she desires to. It's just they're not interested. So, which is a tragedy because the world needs women and it needs children, but that's a separate issue. The secular culture, I don't know what this, whoever this crazy feminist that started the feminist movement, she says a woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle. I don't know what her issues were in life, but she obviously had issues, but it's not true. People need each other, people need love, they need support, and it's and the fact is they did a great job at convincing women to not seek marriage, and people are miserable and not having children, and whoever was miserable to begin with, you know, succeeded in getting others to join them. But that's a separate issue. The main thing that I want to bring out is that if a woman wanted a man, she can do it. She can turn on the charm. And what's the charm ultimately? It's making a person feel loved, right? What we call mayin nukvim, giving a person a sense of love. And that love creates love. Love is an attraction. Love is love. So it's that love that ruach aisi ruach v'amshich ruach. Spirit attracts spirit and draws to its spirit. So if a person loves someone else, it draws spirit to them. It draws love to them. So what does this mean practically? Same thing as with us and Hashem. It's not enough that a human being does a mitzvah. A human being has to kind of love. They have to sacrifice. And wait, what is love? Love is giving of oneself, right? The person's not attracted, they're dating, but the person doesn't really give themselves to the other person. It's not attracted. First, love is a certain exclusivity. I want you. When a person, there's a lady in the city, she's a very bright woman. So she told me that she noticed that whenever a marriage works, there has to be one person that really wants it to work, or a dating that turns into marriage. Somebody has to really want. If you have two people, that's what happens today. Two people go out, and they're both not interested. They're both like playing around, you know what I mean? If the other person happens to be the best, most charming person of the opposite gender in the world, but it doesn't just reach the highest level of charm. So whatever. They're both not really that interested in marriage. They're both like interested in themselves, basically. And if it was the best thing for themselves, then they would do it. That's kind of what's going on in the world. That's why I think religious people are better off, because the religious people are also looking at it from a religious perspective. They're saying, oh, well, Hashem wants me to do this. This is the right thing to do. But if you take God out of the picture, so why should I do it? It has to be in my interest. And it has to really be in my interest. That's why I'm going to do it. So when we have a drawing down of the Shekhinah, drawing down of Hashem, there has to be a strong desire for Hashem. And this is what the whole Tanya teaches us, is that basically there are two categories of people. We have the tzaddik and we have the Beinoni. The tzaddik is somebody that transforms the nefesh habahamis, right? We all have an animal soul. The tzaddik, he actually makes his animal soul into a godly soul, like David HaMelech. David HaMelech, mamish, he fasted for 40 years. His whole desire in life was Hashem. So that obviously attracts Hashem. Your whole thing is me, I'm with you 100%. It's transformation. That's why we know, like it says, that those that wanted to get into the B'chia, wanted to get into the Heichel, into the room of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai in Shamayim, it says, whoever did not transform. Have you started learning Chitas yet?
Tell me what Chitas is.
Chitas is the daily Chumash, Tehillim, and Tanya.
No, I didn't start yet.
Okay, cool. But you will, right?
Yeah, maybe when I go back.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Home.
Good stuff. Right. Otherwise, I'm going to have to call you Del. Okay. So, the daily Chumash sometime, very important.
And I can get that on Chabad.
Chabad.org, daily study. You gotta always be growing. And the Rambam as well, if you can. Very important. So, you go through Rambam, you go through every single Jewish law. Big stuff. So the story of life is that Reb Shimon Bar Yochai was able to take the physical world and turn it into a spiritual world. There was no separation by the tzaddikim. You see this by the Rebbe as well. There's no separation between the world and God. It's all Hashem. It's all for Hashem. It's all good. There's no different realities. Now, we know one of the big ideas of the Tanya, in fact, the Rebbe says that because of all the avodah, because of everything that we've done in Golus, at this stage, we can actually transform ourselves, and we can have that the physical, that we can all become tzaddikim. The Rebbe says that now we can, did you know that? Yeah, the Rebbe says that we can all become tzaddikim. And it's very interesting because in Perek Yud Daled, where he kind of almost indicates that you can't be a tzaddik, if you look carefully, he says you can be a tzaddik. So, in any event, certainly the Rebbe says now we can't be tzaddikim. And if you think about it, the level of Baal Tshuva is higher than a tzaddik. What is the level? You're really giving yourself, you really have that love for Hashem. So the idea of being a tzaddik, which is basically that you have the level of ishapcha, the true desire for Hashem, this is certainly available today in a certain sense, specifically because of the Baal Tshuva rejects the stupidity of this world, so he really has the ability to dedicate himself to Hashem. But be that as it may, so the classic idea of the Tanya is that the animal soul will always remain strong. The person's always going to love cheesecake. He can't help himself. He's going to like cheesecake. But he can control himself. He'll limit the intake of cheesecake, or he'll only do it for Hashem. He'll have a controlled desire. So this guy, he is also serving Hashem. But where is he serving Hashem? Not in his heart like the tzaddik that he's transformed his heart. He's serving Hashem in his actual deed. In other words, you make sure the cheesecake is kosher, you make sure he eats it on Shavuos, or he doesn't think about cheesecake all the time, he thinks about Torah, he chooses to think about Hashem, speak about Hashem. So he burns his animal soul. The tzaddik transforms the animal soul. He turns his animal soul into light, into the oil for the Shekhinah. Like the wick that has to burn. What's the black? Which in fire you have different colors. You have the black around the fire, and then you have like I think like an orange and a blue. So the wick, the black is the wick. So the body is like that wick. It's burning. What's the burning? It's the passion of the animal souls getting. It's like the oil getting given over to Hashem. So this oil is very, very special. It's very holy oil. What is this oil? It's the sacrifice. You have to have a sacrifice, because if you're not sacrificing, you're not really dedicating yourself to Hashem. So the tzaddik sacrifice is literally his animal soul. He's given it to Hashem. But the Beinoni, he doesn't give his animal soul, because his animal soul is fine. He's like, he just likes his cheesecake. But what he is doing is giving his actual thought, speech, and action. Right? He's not allowing the animal soul, so he's like kind of humbling the animal soul, and that is the fuel. So this is what the Tanya is teaching us, that our dedication to Hashem is the fuel, that's the connector point of the Shekhinah of Hashem, and therefore Hashem and the soul, and the animal soul become one. This idea of Dirab Tachtoinim, Hashem coming into this world, l'chaim v'lebracha.